Yeah, Michael Greger, I've had him on the show twice. I had Neil Barnard on this last year. Obviously, I went a year plant-based after I met John Joseph. And John challenged me to do a half Ironman race on a plant-based diet. Now, I had kind of flirted with plant-based before, but I had never done it. And he said, Brian, you're going to find you don't have the injuries. And I was 47 when I did this. And all this other stuff. I didn't believe him. I went plant-based. I did struggle in the beginning to get enough calories, but once I started doing it, I did feel good on it. I didn't have injuries, which kind of blew my mind, but I, of course, didn't do a test with meat only. And I kept it up for the whole year. I just thought, I'm going to do this and I'm going to give this a try. But towards the end of the year, I said, Shawn, am I doing this because I'm being dogmatic, or am I doing this because it's the right thing to do? And I have a whole history of taking things to the extreme in bad ways, sometimes with drugs, sometimes with money, so I can just get in there and just do it to do it, And at the end of the year, I was like, I don't know if this feels right. So I had a little bit of sushi, and my stomach was like, this is okay. And I had some red meat, and my stomach was like, this is okay. And I just started thinking to myself, you know what? I'm going to bring these things back in my diet. And that was my experience. I'm sure I made a lot of enemies in that vegan community. And in my movie, I had Charles Poliquin in the movie Iron Mind. And Charles was the anti-vegan. He was laughing at me. He was saying, I trained, like he's dead now, but he trained hundreds and hundreds of Olympic athletes. He said none of them were vegan. And he was saying all these comments. And I'm telling you, Shawn, I had vegans that came up to me at the movie premiere and said, Brian, I think he's right. And I was like, what? I mean, these are guys that would never come to my Thanksgiving meal. They were always bringing me pieces of fruit. And he changed some of their minds, and they kind of went back. And there's one of my vegan friends, Timothy Sheaf, who was the vegan prince for 6 years. And now he's like, Brian, you don't understand. All of these vegan influencers, they cheat, they're unhealthy. I mean, he's really gone completely the other way.
Yeah, I talked to Charles. Charles called me up several months before he passed away and talked to me and said, you're doing the right thing, and this has been my experience. And he said, I never felt better in my life, compared to the time I was eating, 5-6 pounds of meat a day. And, he's obviously a big guy, bodybuilder type guy. And then, of course, I've talked with Tim as well, because he obviously had that experience where he, changed his mind significantly. But, at the end of the day, you're going to do what's right for you. I've seen, thousands and thousands. In fact, I started a Facebook group for ex-vegans, and we've got thousands of members of folks that, they tried it and it didn't work for them, and that's fine. I honestly think, you should try it both ways. Don't get dogmatic, because here's a problem. They get tied up in the ideology and they lose the purpose of why they may be doing it in the first place. You do it for your health, and if it doesn't work for your health, then that's a problem, I think. I've talked to, I used to engage with those folks online more, and I just realized it was a waste of time. But the one question I would ask them, I said, look, if you needed to eat an animal product to either save your life or improve your health, would you do it? And invariably they'd say no. And I said, well, then you're just not rational. I can't, understand that position. But that's their ideological belief, and they're entitled to it.
Well, that's the problem with veganism, is it's wrapped up in this, ideology of I'm not going to harm other sentient beings, which is noble, and it sounds like a great idea, but you get wrapped up into that. So then you start making choices based on that and not your health. And Tim said the same thing. He's like, Brian, at the end of the day, my health and my performance is more important. If I have to drink some milk, I'm going to do it. And he made that change.
Sure.
But he had to walk away from a lot of stuff.
Yeah, this is a good way to transition into like a sustainability argument, because people talk about what's sustainable. I will tell you what's clearly not sustainable is sick people. If we want to frame it in the frame of, say, greenhouse gases, which is sort of a hot topic right now.
Cowspiracy went deep into that, right?
Yeah, and they had some really weird numbers from the World Resource Institute. That's been totally debunked.
You didn't buy the CO2 or the methane numbers.
Well, the cows breathing CO2 out was a greenhouse gas pollutant. That's been completely dismissed. But when we talk about impact, like we're in New York right now, we're in the United States, and this is what I'm sure many people that watch this show live in the United States, and we try to make an impact. Well, we look at the healthcare industry. The U.S. healthcare sector puts out 10% of our greenhouse gases, and so if we want to make that argument, then we can say, well, what does animal agriculture put out in the United States? Well, it's 4%. This is all EPA data. So you're like, well, and cows are 2%. So you're like, well, what if I'm not sick anymore? I've just taken away from contributing to 10% of the greenhouse gases, and I'm contributing to the 2%. You know, and that's just an easy metric to do. But people, again, when we myopically focus, and we see this with medicine, with cholesterol or any other biomarker, when we myopically focus on one area, we don't step back and say, what's the overall impact, the big picture? You know, we see it time and time again, these unintended consequences. Well, what if people decide they're going to give up meat? And this is the interesting thing. So let's say we've got all this environmental cries about saving the planet and doing the right thing ethically. How did industry respond? What was the big response? And we see it. It's Beyond Meat. It's the Impossible Burger. Well, what is it? That's just more chemical processed garbage. And I know Neil Barnard was on here saying, well, it's perfect. Look at the ingredients. I mean, it's literally garbage for us. That has been the response. So the answer is, oh, we're going to save the planet by feeding you more crap? I mean, that makes no sense. And so it's, you know, I think there's other solutions.
Which
clearly
makes you unhealthy and then taxes the healthcare system.
Taxes
Not to mention
healthcare system,
the financial costs. I mean, you were a doctor for many years. It's what, 20% of GDP is spent
That's huge, and it's
on
going
healthcare?
up. I mean, we spend 3.5 trillion and growing every year in healthcare. I mean, it's ridiculous. And what do we have to show for it in the U.S.? The fattest, sickest, weakest, disabled, you know, depressed population on the planet. I mean, that's what we've got for all this.